Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalam Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the weekly Halaqah. And inshallah ta'ala, if we go on to the slides. And this week we're going to explore the journey of Taffakkur. Taffakkur, contemplation. Very important. This is the foundation, one of the key foundations to the aims and the objectives of Heartsea. And you've probably noticed so many times, and it should be fundamental, so many times we always begin, whatever it may be, a course, workshop, whatever it may be, with returning to the very beginning of the first ayat revealed to our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. And what was he doing in the cave of Hira? He was in deep tafakkur, deep Islamic contemplation. And how many times we've explored, and really we've hardly even scraped the surface, but how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala many times in the Quran asks us, why do you not think, ponder, reflect, and to engage with our senses. And ultimately it is with the heart, not the pumping heart, but with the qalb. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes use the word qalb? Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes use the word fu'ad, etc.? This is all part of this understanding of tafakkur, and which sits next to it. Tafakkur is tadabbur. So the journey of tafakkur. And I want to cover this subject because when we're trying to understand and connect with the Quran, and we have to visualize that you have the revelation. Okay, so we're coming up to the month of Ramadan. We're in the month of Rajab. We're coming up to the month of Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala, that inshallah ta'ala we will reach it. The month of Ramadan is the month of the Quran, the revelation. And we need to have a relationship with the Quran. So how do we have a relationship with the Quran? We have to go through certain steps. We have to be able to read the Quran. So that means in a process of learning the Arabic, learning tajweed. Then if we want to then advance, as we should do, going through understanding nahwa and so, which is all to do with grammar, etc. And then going further and further and further. That's how we read the Quran. But within the Quran, there's another layer. And that layer is the vast amount of ayah, signs, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to reflect on, to study, which are the signs of the natural world, of the universe. And so we learn from Iqra, Bismi Rabbika alladhi khalaq, the first two ayat, and some ulama say because Iqra is mentioned twice in the surah, even from the two mentions of Iqra, that in order to be able to read the signs in the Quran in relation to the nature and the universe, we have to learn how to read the language of nature. And so they refer it to, the ulama have referred it to the Kitab al-Kawn, or the Al-Quran al-Taqwini, not a literal book. I have to keep emphasizing that, okay? And this journey of tafakkur is essential, okay? If we just look at that second mission of the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was tazkiyah. Tazkiyah, and we mentioned again, tazkiyah al-nafs is so crucial and has such an important relationship with the heart. And that's why today we are in a battle it's been a battle from day one since Shaitan was sent out from Jannah, and it is a battle of hearts and minds. And this battle is in its final stages, and Shaitan has to now increase that battle and do what he can to deflect mankind from the straight path. So this understanding of Taffakkur is essential, and it's a journey, just like the journey for us is asking to be on the Siratul Mustaqim. Some of us are walking, some of us are running, some of us are crawling. It's a journey, and to be able to move towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires Taffakkur, and this Taffakkur is about understanding how to engage with the ayahs. And it's a journey that we need to understand. Go on to the next slide. So let us look at the depth of faith. This is the first layer. This depth of faith is either going to accelerate you on your journey. So imagine it's a pathway. Okay, obviously it's the path which is the Siratul Mustaqim. And we have to go through these gates, these doors. And the first door to go through is the depth of faith. How strong are we in our iman? What relationship do we have, okay, as Muslims? And I often refer to the I'm not sure if it's classed as the 4 W's or the 5 W's with a single H. What, when, why, where, who, and how. And they are the journalistic tools that are the backbone of any journalistic story. And we have declared ourselves as Muslims. And we have to make sure that any question that comes to us with what, when, why, where, who, and how, we can connect to it and deliver that answer. Okay, so that's important for us. Whoever's asking us the question, it's important that it's the foundations for us, and it is important for us in relation to dawah. And when the angel Jibril alayhi salam came to the Prophet, it's in the famous hadith before our beloved Prophet passed away, and asked those fundamental 3 questions. Just think of all the revelation that came over 23 years. And the angel Jibril alayhi salam just came and summed al-Islam up in 3 words. What is Islam, Iman, and Ihsan? Yes, the hadith goes on to talk about the end of times, but that was the 3 questions that was put to the Prophet himself. What is Islam, Iman, and Ihsan? And we have to not just understand it, but we have to put it has to become part of our life. So we really have to understand what, when, why, where, who, and how. Not just by words, but by understanding deen. Deen is a whole way of life. So this depth of faith. And, sadly, we are surrounded by this war at the moment, this battle of hearts and minds. And Shaitan enters us through our eyes and through our ears. And why does he want to enter through our eyes and through our ears? Because he wants to attack the city. Okay, every power that goes into battle wants to have a strategic plan to attack the towns and cities, but the capital. And the capital for every human is the heart. So we have to protect the heart. And this is the importance of the tazkiyah al-nafs. All of this is all interconnected. So the depth of faith is very important. We have to understand, I am a Muslim. What does it mean? Then connect it to what, when, why, where, who, and how. for our own sake. I follow Al-Islam. Okay, connected to what, when, why, where, and how. Okay, and so this is very important, and this can either help us or prevent us on this journey of Taffakkur, which is contemplation. What are we contemplating about? When we look at Heartsea, it is about contemplating about the Quran, contemplating about the whole of Al-Islam, contemplating about the whole world, contemplating about our whole purpose on earth. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. I have not created jinn and mankind except to worship me. Nothing is separate, and that's a key message that we learn in Heartsea. Go on to the next slide, please. And the length in which one can concentrate. Now, this is a major problem because of this battle that Shaitan has put on mankind. And in this age of, in this information age of technology, and dangerously, we're now moving into AI. And this is very serious. And the length in which we can concentrate as humans is decreasing rapidly. We often talk about when we do a YouTube video that I remember the time when it all began, you know, everyone was doing 20-minute videos because in those times, and it wasn't long ago, the concentration capacity was 20 minutes or even more. But now, so many, including us, so many now are reducing that capacity. Even 5 minutes. I mean, this is serious, my dear brothers and sisters. 5 minutes is too long in many ways, even for a YouTube video. And so some organizations now, some scholars are now just doing short clips, which we do sometimes in Heartsea. 1 minute, 2 minutes, even 1 minute, 2 minutes can be difficult. And there I'm just focusing on YouTube. Look at our children in relation to school, the concentration levels. It is because these are all symptoms of a bigger thing. Okay, the crisis, okay, is this perception of how we see the world that we keep going back to, which is obviously one of the reasons why we started to Heartsea, is that everything is in silos. And behind all of this is this strategy and the plan of Shaitan. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also testing us. Everything, of course, is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when we can't connect things, that affects our concentration levels. And now we're in this information age. Everything is accelerating. You know, everything is fast paced. From the moment we get up to the moment we go to sleep, it's just, well, you know, just takes us straight to the Surah Wal-Asr inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu s-salihati wa tawassaw bil haqqi. Verily mankind is in loss, illa, except those who believe, those who can peel away the layers and see the reality, who can peel away the veils and see reality. Next slide. And so we're just going through this information age where we're just scrolling through, whether we're scrolling through our iPhone, our iPad, we're scrolling through what's on television, the vast amount of channels. We're just scrolling, okay? And we've lost the ability to concentrate. And even in Heartsea, where we try to, Heartsea is not about theory, it is about engaging with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. And one of those exercises or activities that we do is about sit spot. Just listen for 5 minutes. Look for 5 minutes. And as I say to you, even that now is very difficult, because what does that mean? Listen for 5 minutes. It means to cut everything out. And if you're going to be in a forest location or a valley or top of a mountain, it means, inshallah, reduction of sound and distraction. But we're so conditioned now to be in that environment, it scares the living daylight out of so many people. They can't deal now with an environment, a location where there's no sound. It scares them, because what happens? It triggers someone to engage with their thinking, and they don't want to do that. Very similar. Why does someone self-harm? Why does someone become an addict? They take drugs or whatever they may do. Often it is because they're numbing the pain of what's happened before. So this concentration level beautifully is understood by Professor Ian McGilchrist, who, again, we bring up a lot in Heartsea. I've done some work with Professor, and this Professor lives on a beautiful island just north of Scotland. Was one of the leading neuroscientists in the world. And he spent a number of years really going back, revisiting, okay, and to understand the brain hemisphere, the left brain hemisphere and the right brain hemisphere. And he has brought out two massive books, and they're very difficult to engage with. They really do. We tried to explore one when we was looking at books, and perhaps I chose the wrong book, but they are, if you have the time to go through them and you can concentrate, they are profound. Hence why I was engaging with the professor, because in part of the master and his emissary, he focuses on religion, faith, and one faith where he wasn't focusing on was Islam. So I was coming from an Islamic perspective, and subhanallah, how the understanding of shaitan, the Dajjalic system, and everything that I've just spoken to you about resonated with what he was researching. And particularly when we talk about the battle of hearts and minds, and it's there in his title of his first book, The Master and His Emissary. Because our concentration levels have depleted, and they're increasing because we're coming towards the end of time. But if you go back, okay, if we go back, okay, for us to go forward as an ummah, which we are supposed to be the Khalifa, we have to go back to understand it in order to go forward. We should be taking a lot of lessons from the first three generations of the companions of the Prophets, and then take that to go forward, because they are the ones that really understood and lived and breathed Tawheed. If we go back, and his research showed that the right brain hemisphere dominated mankind. Didn't separate it from the left brain hemisphere, that's impossible. But the right brain hemisphere that sees everything in a holistic manner. Okay, that enabled insan to concentrate more, okay, because it was looking at the bigger picture. Whereas today, with everything that I've spoken about and the age of information and the birth of Western civilization, we're stuck now deliberately into the left brain hemisphere that sees everything in isolation, that doesn't want you to think, that doesn't want you to concentrate. Just in the age of information, don't understand it, just hear it, listen to it, and then just move on, just scroll through. So the master, in relation to Professor Ian McGilchrist, is the left brain hemisphere, who now has said, I'm going to control you as the right hemisphere. And there's a lot of similarities that I was explaining to him in relation to the shaitan and the Dajjal and the Dajjalic system. And then his latest book is The Matter of Things, where then he takes it forward and he really does focus on the left brain hemisphere, where we just see everything in terms of things, in terms of the object. Look at the Arabic language in terms of the cover. And so when we are trying to immerse and connect with the Quran, we're finding that difficult. How many times have we heard that it's Ramadan, the month of the Quran, and then we put the Quran away because we're reading it in the same way as we're reading any other book, but we're not engaging with the Quran because we don't understand the Quran. We're not having a relationship with it. And the only way you can have a relationship with the Quran is by reconnecting to the right brain hemisphere. Because all of those ayats in the Quran in relation to the natural world and the universe are in absolute harmony with all the other ayats which are there embedded in the Quran. Okay, so although you have the revelation and the Kitab al-Kawn, of course, it's all one. And this then connects us to understanding even more, which is, again, it can help us. It's a contributing factor. It can not be in relation to this journey of Taffakkur. Okay, this journey of Taffakkur, of contemplation. Okay, all depends on these doors that we have to open. And some doors may not open so quickly, so we have to work. And another contributing factor is, are we an introvert or are we an extrovert? The introvert is the one that tends to connect in terms of relationship with the right brain hemisphere. The introvert is the one that will move along the path, the sort of mustaqim, in relation to the Taffakkur much more quicker. The introvert is the one that's not going to be misguided and absorbed into the information age. Yes, I'm not saying they won't engage with it, but they won't be absorbed into it. They are the ones that don't like the hustle and the bustle. They don't like the fast pace of life. Okay. They want to retract and isolate themselves. Some want to isolate themselves completely, and some just want to engage but not to overengage. Whereas the extrovert is the one that is loud, is out there, likes the information age, likes the crowds, likes the hustle and bustle, the fast pace of life. And what we really need to try and do, and to teach our children as well, and the next generations, is to get that mizan, to get that balance. But in an ideal world, if you want to really accelerate on the straight path, it is the introvert. And if you study the lives of the ulama, the majority of the time they were introvert. Even when students would ask them a question, they were very reluctant to give an answer if it was relation to a hadith or a fiqh issue, because once they said something, then they were accountable for it. Okay, Alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed me to travel the world and be in the company of some amazing ulama. Many have passed away now, and I can, yes, without doubt, I spent days with them, weeks, months, years with them, and being in the company with them within the classroom, being in the company with them at their home, looking at how they eat, in every way, very much a complete introvert character compared to the extrovert. Now, that's not to say we put down a person who's an extrovert. No, of course not. But if you're traveling along the path of Taffakkur, which is what this Halaqah is about, we really do need to try and move as much as we can into understanding and taking over the role, and to think and to live and to try and behave in the terms and the qualities of an introvert. How do we do that? Well, we have to then engage with Allah Ta'ala's creation. We have to get out of the cities. Okay, we have to make that short hijrah. We have to go off grid. Okay, make that sacrifice. Go on to the next slide. So it's that peace of mind in the heart. Okay. Our beloved Prophet himself said that there's a piece of flesh that is in the body, and if that piece of flesh is sound, then the whole body is sound. So we just took that from the Prophet himself. And if we look and then reflect on the tadabbur, not taffakkur, the tadabbur of the Quran, and then we look and how many times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to the heart in the Quran, because it's the heart that actually sees, it's the heart that actually thinks. That when we get to that level, and to be able to get to the point where our heart is seeing, our heart is thinking, then we've moved into the right brain hemisphere. We are in mizan. That's not saying like what we've just seen, that we're totally disengaged with the left brain hemisphere, that sees things in isolation, that sees the object. Of course not. That's impossible. Allah has created the brain hemispheres to work together, but predominantly it's the right brain, okay, that has to dominate over the left brain. Now, this was the research by Professor Ian McGilchrist, but when we understand Islamic civilizations, okay, that going right back, it is the right brain hemisphere that has a relationship with the heart. And science is now proving that a lot. Some of the work that I've done with heart map. And we was working with them in relation to this, and also in relation to trees, subhanAllah. Go on to the next slide. Environmental factors. So let's look at the 3 Islamic conquests. When we talk about conquest, we're talking about comprehensive conquest. We're talking about conquest of the self. So again, we're on this journey. We want to move towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we want to engage and to be able to see and understand the ayah of the Quran. Okay? وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَانَ لِيَعْبُدُونِ. I've not created jinn and mankind except to worship me. Question. So how do we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because we cannot see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world. It is through knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so how then do we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It is through his signs, his names and his attributes. All of the signs, the ayah around us and in the natural world and in the cosmos. And in order to do that, which is connected to Taffakkur, we have to cleanse our hearing, cleanse our eyes, cleanse all of our body, and ultimately cleanse the heart. And that's the battle of hearts and minds that we are constantly in with shaitan. Tazkiyah and nafs. Now, go back before Western civilization split away from the divine, and you study the subject of psychology. Psychology was the study of the soul. And when we talked about Tazkiyah al-Nafs, that was completely understood. Today in Western civilization, psychology has no connection with the soul at all, doesn't even comprehend that relationship. We'll now transfer the soul into, which is called the mind, okay, which is important, but they can't deal with the soul. Once psychologists start to deal with the soul, like the scientists today, like with Western civilization, the soul then has to then open up that door to the divine, and they can't do that. So the 3 Islamic conquests is the conquest, the comprehensive conquest of the self, the Tazkiyah al-Nafs. Again, I repeat, That's the second mission to the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that was fundamental in the period of Mecca. The Islamic laws and all the fiqh didn't come down, and all of the prayers didn't come down, and Hajj and the laws of Hajj and fasting and all of the that we understand from today, the big fiqh issues, they didn't come down in Mecca. Key focus in Mecca was to eradicate the shirk. So that's the tazkiyah, eradicate the dirt, cleanse the heart to install La ilaha illallah. Look, La ilaha illallah. So we are first La ilaha, we are negating, then we instill the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. The second conquest is the conquest of the environment. Okay, so this is the environmental factors which relates to the conquest of the self. When I talk about environmental factors, my dear brothers and sisters, I'm not talking about nature. I'm talking about the society in which we live. Okay, for anyone to change a society, then we have to look at everything around us. If we go back to social permaculture, which we often use as an example, social permaculture deals with zone 00, zone 01, deals with the individual and then the family and then the relationships. Okay, even that's more important before we even think about looking into the zones for planting to mimic the natural world. But society, okay. And when we talk about the environmental factors, this was crucial. This is crucial in the life of the Prophet himself. And so we have to understand the seerah of the Prophet in relation to the Meccan period and in relation to the Medina period. All of the environmental factors. Okay, the society as a whole. And if you want to change society, then you have to understand the environment in which you live. Okay, you have to change what? You've got to change hearts. And this is all part of this journey of Taffakkur. Okay. The third conquest is the conquest out of nature, not to destroy it, a conquest, the facade and the corruption that we're seeing today. Yes, it's to take from the natural world, but it is to understand as well. Okay, to understand about the relationships, society, the societies within the natural world. Allah says He's created everything as an ummah. Okay, this is why we talk about the role of tracker, field guide, and very important. So we have to understand these environmental factors can be an advantage, can be a disadvantage. Okay. And in the towns and the cities in which we live, which is fast paced, which connects to Surah Asr and what we've covered so far, is the whispers of shaitan, isn't it? The sound. And sound and resonance and frequency is a major factor which can tip the balance from a human being in harmony to become out of harmony. Just look at society. If we just look at the four elements and take the element of fire, clearly, we see now what's happening if you look at the news in Los Angeles today. Fire. But it's the fire of anger, the fire of hate, the fire of jealousy, the fire of malice, whatever, the fire of crime and violence, which is throughout the world. All contributing factors to this. This is why so many people now want to go off grid. They want to then retreat. Okay. There's something that's very important. We recently just completed a course called Back to the Future, and we covered about this: how to become self-sustainable, how to grow your own produce. Do you remake hydra? Do we go off grid? All very important, and we need to understand it. And Muslims are talking about it because obviously we're coming towards the end of times, which means things are going to get worse before they get better. Next slide. Influence of culture. Okay. Decolonizing the mind. And this is why this is a massive subject on its own, but this is a massive negative impact on our journey of contemplation. Okay, we're in the age of information age because this is all connecting to colonization, capitalism. Okay? Very important. These are linked. This age, this information age, what's behind it all? Obviously, from our understanding and our perspective, it's from Shaitan, but it's all the Western mindset. Okay, to see the world in terms of everything in terms of isolation, not to understand, to divide and conquer. Okay, to divide Allah's creation into first world, third world countries, and to plunge Allah's resources, natural resources, which was there to serve the whole of the mankind. So the influence of culture, okay. And if we look at our Muslim communities, and I only see it now within the West, but so many Muslim communities who have emigrated to the UK over the years, going back to the 50s and 60s from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, now African countries, how even today, second generation and third generation, just finding it's very difficult to get that balance. What we don't want is to immerse our communities into Western culture, but to get that balance. Okay, but the colonization is not just the colonization of the resources; it's the colonization of our minds. Okay, because we're programmed to see that the natural world is just a machine. From Descartes and Bacon, we need to study all of these people, including Darwin, that the natural world is just a machine. It's to use and abuse. And so we have to be careful of making sure that we don't get embedded in that. We're having to learn it. Our children are having to learn all of this. But again, this is why people now are taking their children away from school into homeschooling. They want to make hijrah. They want to go to a Muslim majority country, although it has many issues. The other influence of culture is the aspects of culture which has nothing to do with Islam. Culture is very important. We mustn't forget about our own culture, where we come from and our languages. But culture can also have a negative impact. What we're seeing today, sadly, is that we always have to divide what is authentic Islam from culture Islam. What is a authentic Muslim from a culture Muslim? If we just looked at the subject of dogs, for example, this culture understanding within some communities that within as Muslims that dogs it's so negative, okay, and it really is preventing us from moving on the straight path. We just have to turn to the seerah of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, to look at dogs in the time of the Prophet and Masjid Nabawi. We have to look how Allah engages us in relation to dogs in the Quran. It's a massive subject, but behind all of this is Shaitan. But those of Western society, those who are pulling the strings, use this culture to break down communities, and that's how they colonize the world. So we have to be careful. This is another negative contributing factor that is preventing us from this journey of Taffakkur. Because if we are just maintaining and living in the left brain hemisphere and surrounded by Western civilization is the answer, then we are really going to struggle. Next slide. An ilm and the polymath. It's more than just the object. I said that we need to go back to the first 3 generations to understand them in order to go forward. And we focus a lot on the polymath in relation to heart seat. What was it that was different about civilization in sand before the birth of Western civilization? Going right back to ancient civilizations, again, humanity predominantly thought, lived in the right brain hemisphere. We look at the Islamic civilizations of Baghdad, Iraq, Spain, Andalusia, Cordoba. Okay, what was profound about them? Why are they such holiday destinations, more so for non-Muslims? Because they were the centers of learning for the Muslims, Christians, and the Jews. But what stood out about those individual teachers? They were Muslim, they were polymaths. And again, in Western civilization, and connected to all what we're discussing here, and which is preventing us on this path of Taffakkur, is to think in terms of a polymath. A polymath is that individual that can connect and understand a number of subjects and bring them together. So sadly today, you name a polymath. If you mention a polymath, I want to become a polymath, they will just laugh at you. But they want you to specialize, which is left brain hemisphere, the Western perspective of life. But the polymath, today, you say, who is the polymath? Name me a polymath. It's Leonardo da Vinci. And we can learn a lot as Muslims from him. But everybody's forgotten about the wealth of polymaths, brothers and sisters, in the Islamic world. So we need a birth, we need a revolution, a new upbringing of a new mindset for our children to become polymaths, to be able to study different subjects. They may be related or unrelated. Okay? And this is so important for this journey of Taffakkur. If we're just in this box, thinking in terms of a box, then it's going to restrict our whole journey. Okay, imagine walking down a pathway, okay, or walking in a forest, and you've got so much going on within the ecosystem, but you just completely wear blinkers, you disengage. You're not comprehending, you're not taking in those important signs in relation to navigation, in relation to the skills of becoming a tracker and field guide. Okay, it's having a devastating impact, it would, on you. In the same way, if we just approach the Quran and pray that we don't do it in the month of Ramadan, we just open it, we don't understand it, we just read it, okay, without engaging with it, without penetrating, okay, then that's going to have a devastating effect on us in relation to this journey of Taffakkur. Next slide. Good and bad company. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. O those who believe, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and remain in the company of the truthful. So, first part, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, oh, those who believe, oh, you who are Muslims, you who have declared the the kalima. Okay, you who have entered the fold of Islam. يا أيها الذين آمنوا ادخلوا في السلم كافة ولا تتبعوا خطوة الشيطان إنهم لكم عدو مبين. Those who believe enter Islam completely, submit, and do not follow the footsteps of Shaitan. This ayat sums up good and bad company. But in the ayat that recited before, those who believe fear Allah, then there's a wow. And, okay, so the first part is to fear Allah. We're not going to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if we don't know what, when, why, where, who, and how. We don't know what is Islam. We don't know what is Muslim. We have no relationship with the Quran. Okay, we have no understanding of the kalima. So how are we going to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And if we're just in this Western mindset of age of information and left brain hemisphere, how are we going to travel the journey, the road of Taffakkur, of the Surah Mustaqim? But then Allah then says, and be in the company of the truthful. So fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be in the company of the truthful. A truthful person, okay, a truthful person has to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in relation to this ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mention be in the company of the ulama. Okay? Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says be in the company of the truth. If you're truthful in relation to this ayat, it means those who are truthful, who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are the individuals that if you see them, you're going to see the outside and the inside in harmony, in mizan. And alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed me in my life, 25, 26 years now, traveling the world as a Muslim, to be in the company of these righteous individuals who are ulama, because I've seen the outside, and it's not just the outside, but the inside of them and how it all comes together. Okay, when that connects to and helps us understand. Ya ayyuhalladhina nudkhulu fi simri. Udkhulu, Allah says, udkhulu, enter Islam completely. And the word kafata as a mud, which means that the external and internal completely, okay, it all connects as one. Whereas today, sadly, we are just externally showing some form that I am a Muslim, I call it Islam, okay, but no connection. So of course it's going to affect the Taffakkur. Let's extend that out. Okay, just to clarify that. So Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says, "Be in the company of the truthful, not the ulama." Okay, and be in the company here of the as-sadiqeen, the truth ones. I said to you, those who are the sadiqeen are the ulama. Okay. Now, who are the ulama? Well, we need to then, it's not for this session, we need to understand who Allah subhanahu refers to, who are the ulama. It's not the mufti, it's not the imam. So that's for another lesson. So let's just extend it more. Okay, so Allah says, "Oh, you who believe, fear Allah and be in the company of the truthful, good and bad company." Okay, what's going to help us with our tafakkur on this journey? We also need to be in the company of Muslims and elders. Yeah. Say yes, what you've just said. But now I'm saying it, extend it into the natural world. Okay. Why do you have to wait for an event at the masjid, which is an event which is a study circle when they're doing zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Okay, go to the forest and be in the company of thousands, millions of Muslims. Because we forget, because we're in the left brain hemisphere. What? A tree is a Muslim? Yes, the tree, the leaf, the ant, the bee, the flower, the nectar, the pollen, soil, the grass, the weed, the cloud, okay, the wind, the rain, are Muslims. And they are doing the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command us to reflect in and to learn about the zikr, the praise of creation, and why we are not like them, why we are disconnected from them? So be in their company, and be in the company of nature in relation to the natural world helps us to navigate. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to that as well in the Quran. So in relation to that, the natural world and parts of the natural world acts as elders. So we have our elders, i.e. our righteous personalities, the truthful, the ulama, humans, but we also must understand we have elders in the natural world that we need to turn to for help and advice. Also, for some of you may have never heard that before, but that's very important. Next slide. So the object of contemplation. So I mentioned before, there's 4 levels of Islamic contemplation. All I'm asking for us as a ummah is to get onto the first level. And sadly, 99.99% of humanity, we're not even on the first level. I often use the word nature connectedness. Are you aware that there's a professor who I've worked with, one of the universities up in North? He's a professor of nature connectedness. That's his title. He's not even a Muslim. He's a professor of a university, University of Derby, of nature connectedness. We as Muslims are not even on that first level of nature connectedness, which means to literally get out there, not to get out there and have a barbecue or play football or just walk and talk, to connect with our senses. A professor of nature connectedness. For goodness sake, dear brothers and sisters, as I raise my voice, sadly, where are the professors? Where are the ulama of nature connectedness? Huh? This is so important. So this professor of nature connectedness is actually understanding more about Taffakkur than us. And so that first layer is about connecting. And it's a journey, isn't it? It's a journey of Taffakkur. And so we're going to engage with the tree. We're going to engage with the flower. I often use the forest, the trees, because for many reasons. And often when I say to people I meet them and we're going on a forest journey, what do you see? And they say trees. So that's the object. That's the information. That's the khabar. Okay, that's the starting. That's the starting block. Alhamdulillah. But we have to move on from there. In the same way, when we learn Nahwa and so when we learn the Arabic language, we're going to understand the object. But then if we understand where is the object in the ayah, where's the subject? Where's the verb? Where's the harf? Okay, we have to learn to join things up. And all of this will either help us or prevent us in this journey of Taffakkur. And sadly, some of these points that I've raised today can even prevent us, and many of us, I'm talking about Muslims, even just getting to that first layer and even looking at the object. Okay, if we're not looking, then how are we going to go from looking to hearing and connecting that to the heart? So who's won? Game plan 1, okay, by Shaitan. It's a battle of hearts and minds. And so we've got to be able to lift our eyes from looking down to looking up. And that's why we're called Heartseek. All of this, what I'm engaging you in, is to take us from a state of ghafla, heedlessness, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, to a stage of wonder, and then saying, La ilaha illallah, ashhadu wa la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu. Next slide. to engage with the ayah. The ayah is the signpost. The signpost is not the objective. Okay, it is the khabar. It's not the objective. It's just it's part of the journey. Okay, but it has to connect. And we've got to deal with all that I've outlined here. Although just briefly, we've got to understand all this, that the ayah, we've got to move towards the ayahs. And the whole journey is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah gives us this wonderful blessing of the month of Ramadan, which is coming up. May Allah enable us to reach it and to see it through and to benefit, transition to transformation, to get out the other end, to bring these ayats into our lives in order to travel the path of Taffakkur. Okay, so then we can say, yes, Ashhadu an la, I have witnessed. Very important. But remember, the ayat is the ayat of revelation, and within the ayat of revelation is the ayat of the kitab, the book of nature. Next slide. So we've got to engage with the book of nature. We've got to engage with the Quran. Okay, and then even the non-Muslims write about, look at this book here, the wonderful book of nature. So where are we? Where are we in the Ummah in relation to this? Okay. And this beautiful picture I've got right in the center, look at every word in the Quran. When you study Nahwa and so, okay, we look at the root letters. So the whole of the Quran, page by ayah by surah, is full of root letters. It's full of roots, which are the interconnecting roots, okay, which helps us understand about mother trees, helps us understand about the tree which Allah talked about in Surah Ibrahim, which connects us again in a profound way to the subject that we're in today, which we've mentioned before. Okay, so go to our website, go to our YouTube site. Next slide. Subhanallah. So we've come to the end of this short journey. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.